Some films confuse the audience by accident. Others do it with precision. There's a difference between a story that is unclear and a story designed to resist clarity. Certain movies behave like puzzles that were never meant to be fully solved. They leave gaps, missing information, contradictions that remain unresolved, not because something went wrong, but because uncertainty was the point. Here are 7 films that function like cinematic labyrinths. 1. Dark City, 1998. A man wakes up in a bathtub with no memory, already accused of something he doesn't understand. The city around him never sees daylight, and no one seems to question that absence. As he searches for answers, he begins to notice that people's lives feel strangely interchangeable, as if identities are being reassigned rather than lived. The streets shift, architecture changes, and reality itself seems unstable beneath the surface. What begins as a search for personal history turns into a deeper question about whether memory is enough to define a person at all. The film builds its unease through environment rather than plot, using a city that behaves like a physical manifestation of memory, constantly reshaped, layered with fragments from different eras, and never fully coherent. That instability creates a quiet philosophical tension. If identity can be altered externally, then whatever remains underneath must come from somewhere else.
How do they do
2. Enemy, 2013.
that? Lower education. They limit culture, censor information. They censor any means of individual expression.
A quiet history professor notices a background actor in a film who looks exactly like him. The resemblance isn't vague, it's precise enough to remove any sense of coincidence. He tracks the man down, and what should be a simple explanation only creates more tension. Their lives don't just mirror each other physically. Small details begin to overlap in uncomfortable ways. The closer he gets, the more unstable his own sense of control becomes. The film builds its unease through repetition and routine. Apartments that feel temporary, relationships that follow predictable patterns, days that seem interchangeable. Instead of presenting the double as a mystery to solve, it quietly suggests that identity might fracture under pressure long before anyone notices. The visual tone, heavy, yellowed, almost airless, reinforces the sense of a life that has narrowed into habit. By the time the 2 men finally confront each other, the question is no longer whether they are the same person, but what part of a person can split without being seen.
I'm not excusing
3.
myself from this
Synecdoche,
either.
New York,
I will
2008.
have someone play me to delve into the murky, cowardly depths of my lonely, fucked up being.
A theater director receives a grant that allows him to begin an extremely large new production. What starts as an artistic project gradually expands over years, involving detailed sets and people drawn from his own life. Spaces are constructed, then recreated inside other spaces, reflecting fragments of real experiences. Relationships change, time passes, and the boundary between performance and daily life becomes harder to locate. The project turns into an attempt to represent reality itself, even as reality continues moving forward. The film approaches identity and memory through accumulation rather than explanation. Events repeat with slight variations, roles are reassigned, and perspectives shift without clear transitions, creating the sense that a life can be observed from the outside but never fully understood. Instead of presenting a single puzzle to solve, it allows patterns to emerge slowly, as if meaning develops through repetition and time rather than revelation. 4. Predestination, 2014.
You always knew this day would come.
You can do this.
A quiet temporal agent is sent on what is presented as his final mission, tracking a criminal who has avoided capture for years. Along the way, he encounters a stranger whose life story unfolds in fragments, each piece connected to moments shaped by unusual circumstances. Time begins to behave less like a straight line and more like a closed structure, where causes and consequences feed into each other. Identities shift, overlap, and reconnect with an internal precision that feels deliberate rather than coincidental. What seems at first like a pursuit gradually takes on a more circular shape. The film treats time travel as a system with rules and limitations. Dialogue scenes carry most of the narrative weight, allowing small details to accumulate until patterns start to emerge. Instead of relying on large-scale action, the tension comes from the growing sense that certain outcomes may already be embedded within earlier events. The structure itself becomes the puzzle, operating with the internal consistency of a paradox that cannot easily be separated into beginning and end.
The test is
5. Exam,
yet
2009.
It will determine who leaves this room with a contract of employment and who leaves with the bus fare home.
8 candidates arrive at a secure facility for the final stage of a corporate recruitment process. They are placed in a room, given strict rules, and told they have a limited amount of time to answer a single question. Very quickly, it becomes clear that the situation is more complicated than it first appeared. The candidates begin to interpret the rules differently, testing boundaries and watching each other for clues. What starts as a straightforward evaluation turns into a controlled environment where logic, perception, and pressure begin to interact. The film builds tension almost entirely through behavior rather than external events. Small actions, where someone looks, what they touch, how they react to silence, become meaningful data points for the group. With almost no change of location and minimal visual distraction, attention shifts to reasoning itself, how assumptions form, how they spread, and how quickly they can collapse. The puzzle is not hidden in the room so much as in the way people decide what the room means.
Cause comes before effect.
No, that's just the way we see time.
6.
Well,
Tenet,
what about free
2020.
will?
That bullet wouldn't have moved if you hadn't put your hand there. Either way we run the tape, you made it happen.
A man is recruited into a covert operation connected to a threat that does not behave according to normal physics. Objects move in unfamiliar ways, and events appear to unfold both forward and backward at the same time. As he moves deeper into the mission, he meets individuals who have prior knowledge and experience with this phenomenon. Locations shift across countries, but the underlying challenge remains the same: understanding a system where cause and effect do not follow a single direction. What begins as an espionage assignment gradually becomes an attempt to navigate time itself. The film treats its central concept as a mechanism that characters must operate within rather than fully explain. Dialogue frequently focuses on procedure, what can be done, what cannot, and what has already happened. Large action sequences are constructed around interactions between forward-moving and inverted elements, creating situations where events are influenced by multiple temporal directions at once. Instead of building toward a single revelation, the narrative relies on the accumulation of events that only make sense when viewed from multiple points in time.
It's a showtime!
7. Paprika, 2006. A research device allows therapists to enter and observe people's dreams, creating a new method for psychological treatment. When the technology falls into the wrong hands, the boundary between dreams and waking reality begins to weaken. Images, memories, and environments start blending together, with transitions that ignore normal physical rules. Characters move between mental spaces and physical locations without clear separation. What begins as a controlled scientific tool gradually turns into a situation where perception itself becomes unreliable. The film presents consciousness as layered rather than stable, with identities shifting depending on which level of reality is active. Visual sequences follow dream logic, association, symbolism, sudden transformation, instead of chronological order. Rather than explaining every transition, it allows scenes to flow into one another the way thoughts do, creating a structure that feels fluid but internally consistent. The puzzle emerges from trying to understand which level of experience is operating at any given moment. Some puzzles are meant to be solved, others exist to change the way you think while you're trying. These films don't hide answers, they rearrange the rules. Time loops back on itself. Identity stops feeling singular, memory becomes negotiable, and certainty, once lost, never fully returns. The unsettling part isn't confusion. It's the realization that the structure might have been there all along. Thank you for watching.